So what we just found out is that the sum of the lengths of two sides must be greater than the length of the third side. So that's what it says. Start with two smaller sides. If they satisfy the theorem, then the remaining sums will also satisfy it. So number 1 says, can the following result in a triangle? So you take the two smaller sides, that's 5. Is 5 greater than 6? No. So the answer is no. Because you get 5 when you add that, and that is not greater than 6. Okay, number 2. Take the two smaller sides, you get 13. Is 13 greater than 15? No. So that can't be a triangle. Number 3. Remember, take the two smallest sides. Don't start with the 10. So we're starting with the 5 and the 7. And you get 12. Is 12, the sum that you get, greater than the other side? Yes. 12 is greater than 10, so this one can be a triangle. Okay. What two numbers are we going to add up on number 4? 2 and 7, so we get 9. Is 9 greater than the other side? No. No. It has to be greater than. It can't be equal to. Okay. And then the last two, what two numbers are we going to choose? 12 and 18. So we get 30. Is 30 greater than 27?
Absolutely.
So that one can be a triangle. Any questions about that? To find the range of the measures of the third sides, you add the two sides and subtract the two sides. That will give you a range of possible values. So let me explain. Okay? So number 1 says 3 and 7. So you're going to add 3 and 7 and you get 10. Okay? You're also going to subtract 3 and 7. Do the bigger number first. So 4. So anything that you pick between 4 and 10 would make that triangle possible. Now the reason that 10 wouldn't work is because that would be the same if you added 3 and 7 together. So we're saying anything between there. So it could be 9, or it could be 9.5, or it could be 5, or 4.5, but it can't be 4 and it can't be 10. Okay? Any questions? All right, so number 2. So we subtract it and we add it. Luke, what would you get there on number 2? Okay, we're going to subtract the two numbers, and then we're going to add the two numbers. So subtract the two numbers. And now add the two numbers. Good. So that's the range. It can be anywhere between 5 and 25. Number 3, Ben, what would you get?
4 to 12.
Good. Now sometimes people write it a little more complicated. So I just want to show you if it was written this way, that means the same as 4 to 12. Actually, without those equals. Let me change that.
Well, number 2, would it be 15 to 25?
So there's a lot of more things that you need to know about triangles. Some of it has to do with being able to tell what is congruent to what. We're going to be looking at lots of triangles in this unit. We're going to be comparing. We're going to have like 2 triangles, and we're trying to determine if they're congruent. If triangles are congruent, all the sides are congruent, and all the angles are congruent. Okay? So if I go up to these 2 triangles here, first of all, how do I know that these 2 triangles are congruent? Good questions. So you see how all the sides have a 1 and then a 2 and then a 3? And on this other triangle, it has a 1, a 2, and a 3. That means all the sides are congruent. Okay? Look at the angles. You see how there's I think it's 60 and 50, and a 60 and 50, and then the other angle has a little mark. That means all the angles are congruent. Okay? So all the angles, all the sides are congruent. But now I want to figure out what corresponds to what. Okay? So if I look at F over here, I want to figure out what letter it corresponds to on the other triangle. And you have to be careful because it's not always the same direction. These are actually like sort of reflected off of each other. Okay, so this would be angle C. So the next one says E. Raven, which one would E correspond to? B, good. Haley. D corresponds to what? A, good. Okay. Next is talking about the sides. When you see the two sides there side by side. So the first side says F, E. So starting at F and going towards E. So Dakota, what would correspond to FE?
BC?
It would be BC, but we're going to put it in the same order that they put it in. And so since F started here, we're going to start with C. But it's that same line that you mentioned, so C and then B. So Taylor, what about DE? What would DE correspond to?
AB?
Yes, absolutely. AB. Okay. And Luke, what would FD correspond to? FD? CA. Good. Okay. So when you're talking about the corresponding parts, C always goes with whichever one it's congruent to over there. Okay? Some other important things that you need to know, and I think that you probably would guess that this is true. The longest side of a triangle is opposite the largest angle. So when you're looking at three angles, if you have 100 and 20 and 60, I know that the longest side is across from 100. That doesn't mean that's the length of that side. It just means that's the longest side. Okay? So the shortest side is opposite which angle? The smallest angle. The next two sentences are just sort of backwards. The largest angle is opposite the largest or longest side. The smallest angle is opposite the shortest or smallest side. So let's look at a triangle and see how this applies to anything. What's the largest angle? Looking at this triangle here, what's the largest angle? C, because it's 70. Okay, when I talk about the angle and I talk about the side opposite it, then I'm starting at the angle and I go directly across from it. Okay, so if I'm up here at the angle, I go directly across from it. Okay, so which one is across from the 70? AB or BA. And it doesn't matter which order you put that in, I'm good either way. You go directly across from it. Okay? The next one says the smallest angle. So what angle is the smallest angle?
B.
B. Y'all agree? Okay, so start with that angle and go directly across from it. So which one's across from it? CA or AC. Whichever one you want to say is fine whenever you're talking about the shortest and the longest. Okay, then it says put the sides in increasing order. That means you start with the smallest and then the next one and then the next one. We already know that the smallest is AC and we know that the biggest is AB. We've already found those two. Now we just need to find the middle one. We know that's the one across from 60. So CB is across from 60, so that's the middle one. So CB will go right here. So the first example there says to name the longest and shortest sides. Okay? So first of all, think about the longest and the shortest angle, and then go across from it, and then find the longest and shortest side. So Ray, which one's the smallest side?
Is
Good. Here's their smallest angle, so if I go straight across from it, the smallest side or the shortest side is AC. Good. Jennifer, which one's going to be the longest, or, yeah, longest side? BC, because this is my biggest angle, and if I go across from that, I get BC. Okay, any questions? Okay, next example. Write the angles in order from smallest to largest. Okay, so we're going backwards this time. It gave us the sides, and we got to figure out about the angles. Okay, so which side is the smallest?
B.
CA.
CA.
CA. Okay, go straight across from that to find the angle that's the smallest. So B is the smallest because it's across from the 29 I mean. So we've already used B. Okay, 44 comes next. So which one's across from 44? And that means C has to be last, but let's just make sure. So we used A already. Here's our 50. C's across from it, that makes sense. Okay, any questions? So when you list the angles, if it says list the angles, you can just put letters. But if it says list the sides, you have to put letters you have to have 2 letters for every one of them. Okay? All right, let's go down here to the bottom to these handwritten examples. And if you need to write them out to the side, then that's okay because I know there's not a lot of room. So number 4 says list the angles from smallest to largest. And it says AB is this, and BC is this, and AC is this. I don't even see a triangle. So it's going to be hard to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a triangle. Okay? So for number 4, we're going to draw a triangle. And you're going to label A, B, and C. And honestly, it does not matter where you put A, B, and C. Your A, B, and C can look different than my A, B, and C. But our answers will still come out the same. Okay? I'm just going to start at the top and put A and go around that way. But like I said, it really doesn't matter. Okay. In the example, it says that AB is 30. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put a 30 there. It says BC is 40. And it says AC is 60. So now that I have it drawn and I have my numbers on there, I think I'm able to put them in order. I'll give you a second to do that. Okay, so which side is the smallest? 60, 40, 30. Which one's smallest? Okay, so what angle is across from 30?
60.
C. So C is the smallest. Okay, my next one's 40. So look what's next.
A.
So A is next, right? Because that's across from the 40. And then last one 60, and the B's across from it. Okay, any questions about that? All right, let's look at number 5. What's weird about number 5? Can you tell me something weird about it? There's only 2 angles. So, okay, let's see. It says list the sides if there's the angles, and A is 30 and B is 100. When I drew that triangle, this one right here is the one that looks most like 100, so I'm going to put 100 right there. And that's B. You can put A where you want to. It's 30. So that means C's over here. So what we have to do first is we've got to figure out what that angle is right here. Because I don't know if it's smaller than 30 or bigger than 30 or what. So I've got to find the C. We've been doing that. We know how to find that other angle when we know 2 angles. So what do? Add those 2, subtract from 180. So that's 130, subtract from 180 would be 50. So there would be a 50 over here. So now I have all my angles labeled. And now that I have the angles labeled, I'm able to put it in order. Okay? So which side is the smallest?
30.
30 is the smallest angle, but what side is it? It's across from the 30. BC. Okay? And then next is where the 50 is. So what side is that? AB. So you have to be really, really careful and think about, are they asking about sides or angles? Then there's 100, so across from that is AC. If they say something about angles, then just one letter's okay. But if they say something about sides, then you need 2 letters. But you're always going across from the opposite one.